Good day, love. Welcome back to the Holistic Freedom Secrets podcast. Holistic Freedom Secrets podcast. This is episode 114, and because it's Monday and we get into the Freedom Five to help all of us stay consistent with holistic health and truth telling and all the things as working moms and our families, we're gonna get into something important, okay, and timely, because today's topic is all about discerning truth from ego, love from fear. We're going to talk about the law of freedom and its effect on our journeys to really attaining that vision of holistic health that we have for our lives and holistic freedom. And we're also going to talk about aligning our core values to truth and whether or not we are actually doing that mirror, that reflection. Whew. So let's talk about a real life example without naming names that is happening in the community right now, the truth seeker community. There's this warring of ego. There's this need to just hold firm in truth and let the rest fall. But I want you to kind of like talk about that and why it matters. We got to break these generational patterns, okay? Anyway, that was a lot. What, baby?
You don't want me to do this.
Okay, well, your honesty. Okay. Well,
Because the first thing that's going to come out of my mouth is names.
Okay. Okay, so let's say I don't want to name names. All right.
I don't know why not.
Okay, well, here's what I'm thinking. It's a real life example, and it's dealing with someone that I definitely is definitely a truth seeker and truth teller in our community overall.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like it's a very unfortunate circumstance because I feel like ego's getting in the way some. And I know from the stories that both sides have shared that it is something to where both of their home families, their lives have been threatened, both people. And even the third person, which is like kind of looped into all of this. And yeah. So it's for the podcast. Let's keep going. You got it.
Okay. So basically somebody that has opened the door to us researching various topics is probably getting ready to lose a lot of his following because he's acting 100% on behalf of his ego, and he even sounds childish in his responses, and he's targeting who people that he has now made his enemies, for for childish reasons, egoic reasons, and not being aligned with things, teachings, if you will, that he has shared, which the teachings themselves are true and powerful and aligned with morality.
Yeah.
But he's kind of both humanizing himself as well as making grave mistakes right now, and it's got to cost him, just by natural law. And
Yeah,
it's unfortunate to kind of see my man's go out like this.
I don't.
But also, there's a lot of hope because there's still a lot of time for him to turn this thing around. But if this continues over the next couple months and it's right now direction, I don't see.
It's definitely more of a hindrance than a help.
Yeah.
Um,
It's bad.
The thing about this example and the story that we're sharing is that it's interesting because there's a lot of aspects that you might find a parallel with as a listener, right? So he went through this really hard health struggle and almost died. And for many of y'all watching, I've also experienced autoimmunity. I've struggled with things, and more than that, I've seen my mom struggle with things like cancer, diabetes, with her whole body being overtaken by um, pathogens and all these things that literally are taking life from her, and how hard that is to bounce back from that and to have that inner resilience and rootedness, so that no matter what happens around you, whether in his case his family was threatened, his babies and stuff, and he had a close friend that he felt a big betrayal from, but with all of that, there's still a need to break the cycles that we find ourselves in of, okay, yes, you someone went back on their word, yes, someone was, maybe took advantage of something, but also
We need to say allegedly.
allegedly, there we go, took advantage of you at a vulnerable time. However, at the end of the day, we need to be the living example. Like, are you being the living example of what it is that you are saying that needs to be done, how we need to conduct ourselves? Or are we letting ourselves slip into and fall victim to this victimhood mindset, like a victim mindset, or suppressing the fears and just kind of like hiding behind anger or frustration? Are we going to pettiness? Are we What are we doing?
What are we doing?
Are we acting out of love? Are we acting out of growth? Is it authentic? Are we just telling truth no matter how hard it is to say that you are wrong? That's important. What are we doing?
That question, what are we doing out of this dichotomy, these two areas? Are we perpetuating fear, or are we moving in and from love? Are we moving from fear? Or are we moving from love? Right. That ties into the law of freedom, which we're going to talk about a little bit right now. So, essentially, love, moving from love, you're going to move in a way that attracts, creates, generates more freedom for yourself and those impacted by um, you moving from a place of love. Moving from a place of fear is going to inevitably lead to a decrease in freedom, which is the same thing as saying an increase in slavery. Or an increase in enslavement of yourself and or others who are impacted by you moving in fear, to
whether it's to an idea or
to your karmic consequences.
Yeah.
And there's this kind of idea that, oh, maybe bad actions are here to balance out good actions and moral actions, but that's just a wordplay game given to us, sort of given to our mind, given to our psyche through TV and books and different channels that the manipulators use to control our culture.
Culture.
Moral actions are already balanced.
Mm.
They don't need to be balanced with evil actions. Moral actions are already in balance with everything and in harmony with everything. Evil actions are imbalanced, and therefore they are balanced with karmic consequences, spiritual consequences. Right? That's the truth of good actions and bad actions. Bad actions are imbalanced, so they need balancing. Good actions are already balanced and in harmony with the world. and with our collective calling toward freedom.
And I'd like to mention something. This whole concept of the law of freedom is something that we learned from
Mark Passio.
Mark Passio. And specifically, he breaks it down in a way that I think is just really cool, because he has this chart that has love on one side and freedom and fear on the other side. And these are two distinct paths. You can't cross over from this love and freedom path to this fear and control / slavery path. You have to start again back at love in order to go through the rungs, in order to come to freedom, and vice versa. If you go over to fear, you're going to go through it, So you got to stop, pivot, reset back every time. And this is something that, real quick, this is something that is an ongoing thing, because on your journey of holistic health, there are so many moments where fear will come up of like, am I able to do this? At questioning whether going on your own path and utilizing these alternative strategies and treatments and things will even work, or succumbing to the peer pressure of family or of societal pressures, whatever it is, fear will come. And so this is super important for you listening too, because we have to continuously reset this application of B, of realigning again and again with the truth within your spirit. So I did want to kind of break down understanding and order and stuff real quick.
So how this relates to, this story of childish reaction to an alleged setup, but a setup not to do anything evil whatsoever, but actually a setup to open the door for truth to shine through. It seems, allegedly, right? How this relates to it is who we have, like how I shouted this person out in my book. Get yourself a copy of Culture Control so that you can see who we're talking about if you don't know already. This person that usually puts out a lot of truth and good ideas.
It does.
Was caught and specifically challenged on a few claims that he has put out to millions and millions of people over 2023 and 2024. He's been putting some of these ideas out for longer, but 2023 and 2024, this person blew up to enormous proportions of popularity, right? And so this person, he was invited to a podcast. He did the podcast. He knew what they were going to be discussing beforehand, and he knew that there was going to be a guest, an expert guest brought on. And when he got on the podcast, he thought it was going to be like a conversation, meaning that usually means when somebody says that he thinks they all already agreed on all of the points. But when he got there, they were like, we're going to have a little bit of a debate, because actually the other guy didn't agree with some of the things that Billy has said very, very publicly to millions and millions and millions of viewers. Did I say the name? I think I said the name. Anyway.
Look, no more. No more.
Can't help it. But they do this podcast, and then afterwards, immediately, one of the parties, the party that we are fans of, starts to get real panicky about this becoming public,
because it wasn't a good representation of his work,
because it wasn't a good representation of his ideas.
That too.
and they got real panicky and started to do everything that he thought he should do in case he has to enforce with the court system this conversation that he had with two people being publicized, even though he went to the podcast, physically went to the podcast and sat down and had the conversation knowing it was supposed to be public from jump.
Yeah.
And so after it's decided, um yeah, after they decided, this person decided that he didn't want it to be public, but it wasn't his podcast to decide on that and at the end of the day, things happened
And
and
escalated.
Dude ended up making it public anyway, and at 2:30 a.m. this person goes
I'm like,
and
okay,
starts to try and enforce with the court system steps, with what would be legitimate court system steps, as if what happened was his career was actually like challenged, and it wasn't just a few ideas of his that seem to be now proven false, just being proven false publicly.
Yeah. I don't want to, interrupt you to be like, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. However, okay, I don't want to like cut you off, but I want to get back to the meat and potatoes of this episode of how it ties in versus focusing on just the story. Because of timing, because we got to go. So, one of the things that I wanted to tie this back into is a reflection for all of us on our core values. So are our core values are they aligned with our current actions? And are they aligned with freedom, true freedom? And the pathway to freedom starts with love. It goes into understanding. It goes into order. And that order brings about freedom. We can easily lose freedom as soon as we shift the gears. We go into fear, which leads to confusion, which leads to chaos, and ultimately control and slavery. Slavery to an idea, slavery to a circumstance, slavery to whatever. And that is completely out of alignment with truth, with freedom. Okay. And if we are looking to really break generational chains or break these patterns of disempowerment that keep repeating in our families, in our culture, in our lives, then we need to have these moments of reflection. So I want to invite you, if you have something to write with, jot this down, some reflection questions to journal on. So,
first one, what am I afraid of losing? Second one, where am I seeking control? That's it.
And are your actions helping to build freedom, or are they rooted in a fear-based habit like pettiness or victimhood? So this is something to reflect on. Specifically, this is super relevant to me because I look at the patterns of the planets through astrology sometimes, not in my regular work, but just in my life. I use it as a compass for me. And right now, this week, something that's been happening is there has been a shift with Jupiter and Venus and yada yada. I'm not gonna like get into the planets specifically, but there's been some shifts that make it easy for say with Venus and Mars being in opposition in this coming uh, couple of days, and with Chiron and the sun or whatnot, there's some inner child woundings that will be coming up and challenging confidence when we're looking to rebuild or build new opportunities in our lives. And there are uh, some opposition between what we would desire in our lives, and impulsivity. So we want to watch out for acting rashly in our relationships, because all of this example in the story started off with a very close relationship. And are you burning a bridge out of ego, or are you standing on truth? And knowing the difference between the two. It's truth that is true
and that's what's
always.
important to me is, are you standing on truth? And the reason why the story is very relatable to people is because if
Sometimes
given the same circumstance, even if given the same circumstance with the amount of sort of new and
eyeballs.
sudden fame
Mhm.
that this person has over 2023, 2024, if it happened to you that your ideas that you were willing to repeat to millions and millions of people were challenged, and you couldn't overcome that challenge, you couldn't come up with the right language at the time, whatever, and it was made public, would you go then and immediately try and sick the state on those who exposed your ideas as false, or at least those who exposed you as unable to, off the top of your head, defend your ideas that you're spreading to millions of people that they believe are false ideas? Would you do that? Would you try and get their livelihoods, their reputations damaged in response to a conversation that you all had in public that's being made, or that was supposed to be public, that's now being actually made public after you said, "Oh, I changed my mind. Now I don't want it to be public."
Something that has been happening behind the scenes is everyone has been harmed in this. I would
Threatened.
yeah.
Everyone has been
So
threatened.
so in the case of the first person who choosing to take actions that are, more so in the legal realm, he are he is was facing threats as well, and his channels and things being compromised, and shadow banning and blah blah blah. Same thing for the other people that are involved. So it's kind of like, gotta take a step back. Holistic problem solving is key here. So really begin to discern between truth and ego. Truth and ego. If this action were to happen and get repeated, here's the reflection. If this action were to get repeated by every generation after me, would that result in more freedom, or would that result in more bondage, whether it's mental bondage or otherwise? If the answer is it don't result in more freedom, then we got to reassess, and we got to have the courage to say that we are wrong and we're acting out of alignment with the ideals that we hold dear to us.
And that's the point, is
Yeah.
to reflect enough to have the courage to say where you're wrong in all places, all times that it's been shown that you are wrong. Either
Even if most of the
you're
time you're
wrong,
right.
yeah, either you're wrong in a specific instance or you're not. You know what I'm saying? And in the moments that you do have to admit you're wrong, especially if they're very public, having the courage to either make right what was wrong, or accept the right information, accept the right whatever, the right thing to do, the right response, the right information, whatever it is, and move forward. Because this person had a lot of opportunities, has a lot of opportunities still to um,
Realign.
reapproach, to approach being exposed as as not able to defend his positions at that day, on that day at that time or whatever, to get his notes together and just stick to what he's been saying, or to admit this one is not right, but this is over here is where it was coming from, and this is right, and this is what such and such, just kind of sticking to being committed to truth and whatnot, because you know a lot of people in the same situation would not be like, oh, okay, well now I have to go to the state in this panic because you made a conversation that I agreed to have public.
On the other hand, I easily can see a lot of people going to pettiness and victimhood. So, it is what it is, especially whenever more people are looking to you, things get amplified. And so, in a way, I think it takes a level of um, almost Christ consciousness that you're embodying, a level of a willingness to be all things aside, committed to truth, committed to freedom, not just for you as an individual vessel, but for the next generations, for all. Yeah.
So thanks so much for tuning in to episode 114 of the Holistic Freedom Secrets podcast. It's supposed to be B-Day, but we had to do a whole nother Shine Day because of the
It's both.
weekend, um, the stuff that's been revealed about somebody who, like I said, we're fans of or whatever. It's like, oh, well, gotta talk about it. So we went ahead and talked about it. We will see you guys tomorrow for Cleanse Day. And get yourself a copy of my book, man. Culture Control. Why the Love of Money is Objectively the Root of All Evil. You can find it in the link in the description, as well as the link in the bio and the link in the about for Facebook.
And I will my last words, let them be an affirmation to reflect on love versus fear. I act from love, building freedom and authenticity. I release fear and the need to control. I align my values with my highest vision of freedom. Take good care, loves. Peace.